Hello, we are
Meiting.
and Robin. We are PhD students in Learning Sciences at McGill University. In this video, we will be talking about the research article titled Estimating the Reproducibility of Psychological Science, or as it is shortly titled, Open Science Collaboration, as it was a result of collaboration among more than 100 scientists trying to address the topic of reproducibility in psychological science.
So before we dive into the details of the current study, we are going to begin with the explanation or the elaboration of the several terms in this article. The first one is the reproducibility. So it is a major principle underpinning the scientific method. For the findings of the study to be reproducible, it means the results obtained by this experiment or observational study or a statistical analysis of the dataset should be achieved again with a higher degree of reliability when the study is replicated. And then here comes the other term, the direct replication used in the current study. Direct replication is the attempt to recreate the conditions believed sufficient for obtaining a previously observed finding and is the means of establishing reproducibility of finding with new data.
The authors talk about the idea of reproducibility as being central to the advancement of science. They mention that scientists agreeing or disagreeing whether the evidence supports the claims by citing theoretical or methodological reasons or by collecting new evidence is meaningless if the study is not reproducible. They go on to say that there might be different reasons for difficulties in replication, ranging from systematic or random error, original results being false positives, or replications being false negatives, among others.
So after Robin have been talking about the central idea of the current study, I would elaborate more on the problem statement, which is the problematic of the current study. There have been potentially problematic practices in the research, including the selective reporting, selective analysis, insufficient specification on the conditions necessary, or the sufficient to obtain the results. And without all these detailed transparency about the studies, for example, their methodology or results, the reasons for the low reproducibility cannot be evaluated.
Now let's talk about the study. The study, or the synthesis of many studies mentioned in this article, is a large-scale collaborative effort to obtain an initial estimate of reproducibility of psychological science. The authors conducted replications of 100 experimental and correlational studies published in 3 psychological journals using high-powered design and original materials whenever they were available.
And then as for the study selection, the quasi-random samples have been chosen from 2008 articles from 3 really important psychological journals. They are the Psychological Science, which is PSCI, Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, short for JPSP, and Journal of Experimental Psychology, Learning, Memory, and Cognition.
Each team involved in the study conducted the study, analyzed their data, wrote their summary report, and completed a checklist of requirements for sharing the materials and data. Then, independent reviewers and analysts conducted a project-wide audit of all individual projects, materials, data, and reports.
As for the measures taken to ensure the replication in the current study, the authors have taken several measures. The first one is to minimize the selection bias by having only a really small set of articles available at a time, and to match the studies with the replication team's interests, resources, and their expertise. The second one is only the last experiment reported in each article has been the subject of the replication, because it's based on the intuition that the first study in the multiple study articles was more frequently a preliminary one. And the third one, for the purpose of aggregating the results, only one key result from the selected experiment was identified as the focus of this replication. So the key result they have chosen must have been represented as a single statistical inference test or an effect size. For example, they come from a t-test, f-test, or correlation coefficient. So this effect was identified before the data collection or analysis, and was presented to the original authors as part of the design protocol for critique. And the other thing I really love that they have been doing is they assess the features of the original study and the replication as the possible correlates of their reproducibility. For example, the characteristic of the study as a publishing journal, the original effect size, the p-value, the sample size, the experience and the expertise of the original research team, the importance of the effect with the indicators such as the citation impact of the article and some rated surprisingness of the effect, and they did the exact thing for their replicated studies too.
Talking about the statistical analysis, the authors evaluated reproducibility using significance and p-values, effect sizes, subjective assessments of replication teams, and meta-analysis of effect sizes. When evaluating the replication effect against the null hypothesis, the mean p-values for original studies was 0.028, but it was 0.0302 for the replication studies. Also, the 64 non-significant p-values for replications were distributed widely. The wide distribution of p-values suggested that insufficient power was not the only explanation for failures to replicate. Comparing the effect sizes of the original studies versus the new studies, original study effect sizes were reliably higher than replication effect sizes. And when combining original and replication effect sizes for obtaining a cumulative evidence, a fixed effect model was used, and 51 of the 75 effects for which a meta-analytic estimate could be computed had 95% confidence intervals that did not include 0. The authors refer to inflated effect sizes due to publication and selection biases for observing such a result. In the subjective analysis conducted by authors, only 39 of the 100 studies could meet the criteria of successful replication. Overall, the authors found that reproducibility was stronger in studies and journals representing cognitive psychology than social psychology topics. Simultaneously, all journals and disciplines showed substantial and similar declines in effect sizes in the replications compared with the original studies.
So after we have seen the data analysis, here comes the discussion. The author have filled in some insights. The first one is a large portion of the replications produced weaker evidence for the original findings, despite using the materials we have talked about. For example, from the original authors, review in advance for the methodological fidelity and high statistical power to detect the original effect sizes. But it's also too easy to conclude that a failure to replicate a result means that original evidence was a false positive. Actually, replications can fail if the replication methodology differs from the original in ways that may interfere with observing the effect. And the next one, the author points out that the low-power research designs plus the publication bias favoring the positive results, they together produce a literature with the upwardly biased effect sizes. So this anticipates that the replication effect sizes would be smaller than the original studies on a routine basis. It's not because of the differences in the implementation, but because the original study effect sizes were affected by the publication and the reporting bias, and the replications are not. So in all, the publication, selection, and the reporting biases are the plausible explanations for the differences between the original and the replication effects.
Under the limitations, the authors identify that it is unknown the extent to which these findings extend to the rest of psychology or other disciplines, as only 3 journals were fixed. Additionally, in each article, only 1 study was replicated, and in each study, only 1 statistical result was subject to replication. More resource-intensive studies were less likely to be included than less resource-intensive studies.
And at last, here comes our really brief conclusion, as we have talked about all the details in our implication and the limitation, as well as the discussion section. So all these results just suggest that there is still room to improve our reproducibility in psychology studies. Thank you for watching this video, and good luck everyone on doing your research. Bye!